When a woman begins to live alone, the world assumes she is lonely. They imagine her evenings filled with silence, her mornings with empty chairs, and her nights with echoes of what used to be. But what they never understand is that within that silence, something extraordinary begins to grow. It's not loneliness, it's awakening. It's the rediscovery of herself beyond roles, beyond expectations, beyond the noise that once defined her life. Living alone doesn't just mean living without someone. It means living with yourself. For many women, this is the first time they truly meet the person behind the masks they wore for others. The caretaker, the lover, the daughter, the listener. Now, all those versions fall away, and what remains is the woman herself, unfiltered, unhurried, unhidden. At first, this confrontation can feel terrifying. The silence feels too loud. The days stretch endlessly. The thoughts that were once suppressed now speak up, asking questions she never dared to answer. But soon, something begins to shift. The silence stops being an enemy, it becomes her teacher. In that quiet apartment, she learns new rhythms. The sound of boiling water becomes music. The hum of the refrigerator turns into company. She starts noticing things: how the sunlight falls differently every hour, how her own breath steadies her, how peace isn't given by anyone, it's cultivated. She begins to understand that solitude is not emptiness, it's space. Space to heal, to breathe, to grow roots where no one can see them. This realization transforms her. She starts recognizing how much of her past life revolved around being seen, validated, understood by others, especially men. She remembers how often she shaped herself to fit into someone else's comfort. How many times she silenced her needs to keep the peace. Now, in her solitude, those compromises appear in full clarity. And for the first time, she forgives herself for staying too long, for giving too much, for losing too many pieces of herself in the process of loving others. There's a power in that forgiveness. It's not loud or dramatic, it's quiet, like a dawn breaking after a long storm. It's the kind of strength men rarely witness because it doesn't seek an audience. It's internal, sacred, deeply personal. It's a woman reclaiming her emotional gravity. In solitude, she learns to become her own comfort. She cooks for herself not out of duty, but out of affection. She talks to herself not out of madness, but out of clarity. She builds routines that no one interrupts. And slowly, her solitude stops being about the absence of others. It becomes about the presence of herself. She begins to understand that emotional independence isn't about rejecting love. It's about no longer depending on it to feel whole. When she looks at herself in the mirror, she no longer sees someone waiting, she sees someone arriving, someone complete, someone at peace with her own company. This transformation often confuses people around her. They say she's changed, that she's too quiet or too distant, but she knows what they really mean. She's no longer available to their chaos. Her boundaries have become her sanctuary, her silence, her shield. And that's what men rarely see: the strength it takes to walk away, not in anger, but in peace. To choose calm over company. To choose self-respect over validation. Living alone, she learns the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is when you long for others. Solitude is when you return to yourself. And in that return, she rediscovers the girl who once dreamed freely before she was told what a woman should be. She reconnects with her natural rhythm, the slowness, the softness, the intuition that once got buried under duty and noise. She starts journaling, meditating, watering plants, sitting with tea by the window, and for the first time, she realizes how sacred the ordinary moments are. Every woman who lives alone experiences this secret evolution. She stops chasing noise. She starts listening to the whispers within. The more she listens, the more she learns that strength isn't always visible. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like staying home. Sometimes it looks like sleeping peacefully without explanation. And though men might never fully understand it, they can sense it. The quiet power, the self-possession, the peace that radiates from someone who has met her own darkness and made friends with it. A woman who lives alone becomes a mirror of inner balance. She no longer fights to be loved, she embodies love itself. Her home becomes her reflection, uncluttered, gentle, intentional. Every object has meaning. Every corner holds memory. There's no performance here, only presence, and that's what makes her energy magnetic. When she walks into the world now, she carries silence like armor. Not coldness, but calm. Not detachment, but depth. Because now she knows peace is not found in others. It's built within. There's a quiet revolution happening inside every woman who learns to live alone. It's not loud or visible. It doesn't post selfies or announce progress. It happens in the small, silent victories that no one witnesses. The night she stops waiting for a message. The morning she wakes up without checking her phone. The moment she realizes she no longer needs to explain her peace to anyone. These moments don't make headlines, but they change destines. When a woman begins to live for herself, the world mistakes it for rebellion. But it isn't rebellion, it's remembrance. She is remembering what it feels like to exist without apology, to walk into a room without shrinking, to laugh without permission, to rest without guilt. For so long, she lived trying to be enough for everyone else, a perfect partner, a good daughter, an understanding friend. Now, she is enough for herself. That realization is where real freedom begins. In solitude, she redefines success. It's no longer measured in relationship status, external validation, or others' approval. Success becomes something quieter, being able to sit with her own emotions without escaping them, being able to hold sadness without collapsing, being able to feel joy without fear it will be taken away. The outside world may see her as just living alone, but inside, she is rebuilding her emotional architecture from the ground up. Every night, she meets herself in the stillness. Sometimes she cries, sometimes she smiles, sometimes she sits in silence for hours, realizing that she has finally stopped running from her pain, from her memories, from her truth. She learns that healing is not a single moment, but a slow unfolding, like petals learning to trust the sun again after a storm. Men often think strength is loud. It shouts, it conquers, it wins. But for women who live alone, strength whispers. It's in the way she pours her own tea and sits with herself, instead of escaping into distractions. It's in the way she chooses softness without shame. It's in how she learns that being alone is not something to be fixed, it's something to be understood. She becomes selective with her energy. The endless texting, the shallow friendships, the emotional drama all fade away. Not because she's bitter, but because she's peaceful. She no longer chases connection for survival. She attracts it through authenticity. The people who come into her life now are drawn to her calmness, not her chaos. They see the balance in her, the uncheckable sense of self that only solitude can teach. One of the most profound shifts happens when she stops viewing aloneness as a punishment and starts seeing it as a privilege. She realizes how rare it is to have uninterrupted time with oneself, to understand her cycles, her moods, her fears, her longings. She sees how society taught women to fear silence, to always fill it with noise, television, conversation, or companionship, as if their existence required constant proof of relevance. But now she knows silence is sacred. It's in silence that she hears her intuition most clearly. Her intuition becomes her compass. She no longer seeks advice for every decision. She trusts her instincts, her timing, her truth. That's the strength men never see because it's internal, invisible, spiritual. It's not the strength that competes. It's the strength that endures. Sometimes she looks back at her old life, the one filled with people, noise, expectations, and feels a bittersweet nostalgia. But it's not regret. It's gratitude. Gratitude for how far she's come, for the lessons learned, for the woman she's become. She knows that solitude didn't make her hard. It made her whole. Now, her aloneness is no longer a wound. It's a garden. Every day, she waters it with self-respect, patience, and care. And from that garden grows something uncheckable. Peace. The kind of peace that can't be bought, begged for, or borrowed. A peace that comes from knowing she belongs to herself first. There comes a moment in every woman's solitary journey when she stops needing to prove anything to anyone. That's the moment true independence begins. She no longer tries to justify her choices, her silence, her boundaries, or her absence. The energy once wasted explaining herself now fuels her peace. The world, conditioned to see women as nurturers, often misunderstands this kind of quiet detachment. They call her cold, changed, or distant, but she knows the truth. She hasn't become distant. She's become clear. In her solitude, she learns a lesson few ever teach. Clarity is compassion. When she knows who she is, she no longer demands from others what they cannot give. She stops chasing apologies and starts giving herself closure. She doesn't force conversations that drain her. She doesn't beg for company that disturbs her peace. That's not pride, that's maturity. Because once a woman has made peace with her solitude, she stops seeing loneliness as a punishment and starts recognizing it as a teacher. There's something profoundly spiritual about a woman who has learned to be alone. Her energy becomes different, quieter, steadier, almost sacred. People feel it when she enters a room. It's not about beauty or status. It's about presence. She doesn't need to dominate to be noticed. Her calm is her confidence. Her stillness speaks volumes. And while others may try to figure her out, she smiles inwardly, knowing she is no longer performing. For years, she was taught to measure her worth through connection, through who loves her, who chooses her, who validates her. But now she understands that love was never meant to fill her. It was meant to mirror her. She realizes that relationships don't define her. They reflect the energy she carries. So, she starts nurturing herself with the same tenderness she once offered to everyone else. She learns that loving herself isn't selfish, it's survival. Some nights, loneliness still visits, not as an enemy, but as an old friend reminding her of how far she's come. She no longer fights it. She lets it sit beside her like a familiar shadow and she listens. Loneliness doesn't frighten her anymore because she's learned that emptiness is just space, waiting to be filled with meaning. She fills it with reading, music, reflection, prayers, moments that deepen her connection to something greater than herself. She also starts to notice how different her world looks now. Colors feel softer, mornings slower, her own voice gentler. When she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see what's missing. She sees what's whole. Her solitude has made her luminous in ways the world can't define because peace, once found, radiates from within. Many men and even other women may look at her and wonder, how does she do it? How does she stay so calm, so sure, so fulfilled? The answer isn't simple. It's not because her life is easy or her heart is untouched. It's because she has stopped resisting what is. She accepts the rhythm of life, the arrivals, the departures, the silence between them. That acceptance gives her power no one can take away. Living alone doesn't mean isolation. It means sovereignty. It means she has reclaimed her emotional independence, her right to be whole without being needed. That's a kind of liberation that terrifies some and inspires others. When a woman becomes emotionally sovereign, she's no longer waiting for permission to exist. She stops living as a supporting character and steps into the role of the main story, her own. She decorates her home not for guests, but for her own joy. She fills her shelves with books that feed her soul, her walls with art that reflects her heart, her evenings with rituals that honor her being. Every small act becomes sacred because it's done with intention. That's the secret. Living alone doesn't make her empty. It makes her intentional. And in that intentionality, she discovers something divine. That solitude is not absence, but presence, the presence of her truest self. She no longer runs from silence, because she understands it's where her soul finally speaks. There comes a time in her journey when she realizes something profound. Living alone was never about separation, it was about return. A return to the woman she was before the world told her who to be. A return to the version of herself that laughed without self-consciousness, dreamed without fear, and loved without losing herself. Solitude became her bridge back to authenticity. She now moves through life differently. Her steps are slower but more certain. She no longer rushes to fill silences or explain emotions. When she speaks, her words carry weight because they come from understanding, not reaction. She's no longer performing for acceptance, she's living for truth. There's a quiet beauty in that, the kind that doesn't need applause. When she meets people now, she doesn't seek belonging, she offers presence. She listens deeply, not because she's trying to please, but because she values connection rooted in honesty. The relationships that survive this transformation are rare, but they are real. They are built on mutual respect, not dependency. She now attracts energy that aligns, not energy that demands. Every woman who lives alone eventually discovers that strength doesn't mean building walls. It means building foundations. Walls keep people out, but foundations keep her steady no matter who comes or goes. Her solitude has taught her emotional architecture, how to design a heart that feels deeply yet stands firm. She can love without losing herself, give without exhaustion, and stay without attachment. She becomes the kind of woman who inspires others without even trying. There's something magnetic about someone who is whole. Other women see her and think, I want that piece. Men meet her and sense a quiet power they can't define. She is not waiting to be completed. She is not afraid to be misunderstood. She has learned that peace will always be misunderstood by those addicted to chaos. There are nights when she sits by her window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights fade, and she smiles, not because everything is perfect, but because she finally feels safe in her own presence. The woman who once sought safety in others now finds it within. That's what living alone really means, not isolation, but intimacy with one's own soul. In solitude, she has met every version of herself, the broken, the healer, the dreamer, the realist. And instead of rejecting any of them, she's welcomed them all home. That is her greatest act of love, to be whole, not perfect, to be complete, not dependent. And that's what men rarely see, that behind her calmness lies years of unlearning. Behind her confidence lies heartbreaks she survived alone. Behind her silence lies wisdom. A woman who has lived alone has touched the deepest parts of her being. She knows what it means to rebuild from nothing, to hold herself through nights of doubt and mornings of strength. She doesn't need to prove that to anyone because peace, once earned, doesn't need validation. Her solitude is no longer an act of withdrawal, it's a declaration that says, I am my own home. And once a woman learns that, no one can ever make her homeless again. So when people ask her if she ever feels lonely, she smiles softly, because loneliness is no longer something she fears. It's something she understands. She knows that being alone and being lonely are two different things. Loneliness is emptiness. Aloneness is fullness. And when she finally steps out into the world, into noise, relationships, challenges, she carries that fullness with her. No longer afraid to give because she knows she can return to her stillness any time. That's her power, not independence from others, but independence with herself. A woman who lives alone is not one who lost something. She found everything she was always told to seek outside: love, peace, purpose, and strength. But she found them right where they always were, within her.